Everyone, welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you, Ann Collier. Ann is the founder and CEO of Arudia. Welcome to the show, Ann.
Oh, thank you for having me, Odo.
My pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. Before we go into your personal story, if you could just give the audience a brief general overview of who is Arudia in case they haven't heard of it or know about it.
Sure. So, Arudia is a firm dedicated to improving culture, collaboration, and communication. And the name Arudia comes from the combination of two Latin words, the words to teach and to support, and then feminized for obvious reasons. We've been in business for a little bit over 20 years. I've got two wonderful colleagues. So we're a 100% women-run business, and not that we don't love working with men. We have a lot of male clients, and and you, of course. Thank you for having me on the show.
That's great. It's such a unique name. What made you think of the name? I know you said it's two different words put together.
Yeah. So good question. Because I get asked that a lot. Um, so I'm a lawyer by training. So I graduated from law school back in the early 90s and came to Washington, D.C. for my first job as a tax lawyer at the IRS. And just by way of background, yeah, so I'm very popular or unpopular around March and early April when people have tax questions. I'm also married to a tax lawyer, so I've got plenty of resources there. um, but lawyers are exposed to a lot of Latin in their training, so it was sort of a, do I want to pay some fancy marketing company or should I do this myself? So I got on the phone with a friend of mine and we started going through words and concepts and tried to marry really what I was all about, which I didn't say this, but I do a lot of executive coaching. So I started out by doing career coaching and then executive coaching, and then the business grew to working with teams because leaders would say, hey, this is really great stuff, can you bring this to my team? So I still remember doing my first workshop with one of my coaching clients, team members, to teach communication skills. But anyway, the basics of our work is teaching. So teaching communication skills, giving our clients some insight using, some of the best assessments around the actualized leader profile, the Curtin adaptation innovation inventory. We also use Type Coach to give people insight into them and self-awareness. So insight into themselves, insight into others, kind of a more social awareness. So, not taking everything so personally. When there's in fact, I just got a text back from a client a board that I worked with over the weekend. And she said the KAI, which is the measures problem solving style, was so fabulous. We did that as the first session. And then the next day when they went over some strategic planning, it really helped them get through some difficult conversations and understand each other. And this is a group that really trusts and respects each other, but it just got them to that next level of effectiveness in terms of making decisions to steer the organization. But going back to your original questions, and I digress, it really is about teaching and supporting people. I believe when I partner with my clients, it's truly a partnership, that they have everything they need in themselves to be successful. And so I help them uncover, sometimes it's what do they want to do? Who do they want to be as a leader? Sometimes I help them to see, what is their potential? What is it that they bring, their unique set of gifts? And then how do they make the most of that? So they're living a life where their work is truly their vocation rather than feeling like a four-letter word. So that's really what I'm all about. There are certain aspects of being a tax lawyer that I enjoyed. And as I usually say, I was a lawyer for 11 very long years. But like what I do now, like I love it. My clients are amazing people. It's just an honor to be part of their success. So that's kind of what the name means. And by the way, short, easy to spell, starts with an A. So, all the practical things, like it comes up early in a Google search. And as I said, feminized for obvious reasons.
That's perfect. You mentioned earlier that what brought you to the DC metro area was law school. So you're not originally from here, correct?
No, no. In fact, I grew up in Michigan. Well, I was actually born in New York, but my parents, my dad was a lawyer, and they moved back to Michigan to be around family. And in fact, my mother's a lawyer too. So I
Oh,
was raised
wow. A
by
lot of lawyers.
lawyers. Yeah. Yeah. So I and my sister went to law school later. So, we just couldn't escape it. But I grew up in Michigan in Grosse Pointe, which is a suburb of Detroit. So you may have seen the movie Grosse Pointe Blank. Or Gran Torino with Clint Eastwood. You may
Hmm.
remember that there was a scene at the end where they're driving down Lakeshore Drive. That's in Grosse Pointe. But I went to undergrad and law school at the University of Michigan, and my goal when I graduated was, I kind of needed to get off the farm. I wanted to get out of the Midwest. I wanted to go to a real city, but I didn't want to go to New York. And I really enjoyed my tax classes, which I took as a second year. So that's how I ended up being looking for a job at the IRS, which actually was a really good experience.
So that's what brought you to DC, then the IRS.
Yeah, yeah, it was my job. So I mean, I had other interviews, but had that one job interview, crossed my fingers and hoped that it was going to work out. And and it did. And I worked for the Office of Chief Counsel at the IRS, and then I did a stint in legislative affairs before I went into private practice.
And so growing up in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, what were you into? If I can take you back there for a brief moment, growing up as a child, what did you like? Any activities or sports?
Yeah, yeah. So I was a sailor. So even though Grosse Pointe is actually on Lake St. Clair, which is not one of the Great Lakes, and if you look on a map, it looks tiny in comparison, but it's a pretty big body of water. There's more freshwater sailboat racing in on Lake St. Clair than any place else. At least there was at the time. So, at one point in my life, I was racing sailboats like every day of the week. I taught sailing as my summer job at one of the local yacht clubs. I mean, that was a lot of fun. So that was and I grew up about two and a half blocks from the water. So it was that was my love. Then it was great.
Did you start sailing at a very young age, or when did you pick it up?
Probably at about 10,
Okay.
10 years old.
Wow,
Yeah, I
that's
started
nice.
sailing with my parents. Yeah, yeah, it was great. It was fun, and I'm pretty competitive, so and I love being outdoors, and I love the athleticism of it. So, I'd spend my summers when I was in sailing camp, sailing on these little boats. You'd capsize, you'd work to get the boat righted. You have these little regattas with the other yacht club. So it was a good time, and made a lot of friends there, and that was always fun too.
I see you also had your own boat as well?
My parents had a boat. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But most of the racing that I did was actually just was with other. I sailed out of Bayview Yacht Club most of the time, so made friends there and was able to jump on a different boat. We have this term OPB, other people's boats. So they get to pay all the bills. But I was like 15, 16, 17,
Sure.
18. That kind of thing.
That's nice. So you went to University of Michigan, so I assume you're a big Wolverines fan.
Yes, go blue.
And you went to law school. Did that come from obviously having mom and dad both being lawyers? So you're second generation as far as going into law school, or did you have any really interest in it?
I definitely had interest in it, but you sort of get interested in what you know. So, conversation. I remember my mother going through law school. So she started school when I was 6, graduated when I was 10. I remember going to my first corporate law class when I was probably 7, and taking notes with crayons. I remember that because in corporate law, there are these drawings of what the relationships between the companies look like. And so that was just a great opportunity to take, to draw pictures and copy what the professor was writing. Um, in the 70s, I am not really sure that was totally appreciated, but I remember it. It was one of my early memories.
So at a young age, you were basically destined to go into law school already.
I think that's right. And my sister went to law school later, but she still didn't escape it.
Okay. So you moved to DC, you work for the IRS, and then were all 11 years in law with the IRS?
No, I left the IRS about 5 or 6 years after I started there. So in the mid 90s, and went to King and Spalding, where I worked with Hap Shashi, who's a former chief counsel, with it, just a really great group of top-notch tax lawyers. Firm was great, really nice people. They were fantastic. It was a good experience. And then I went to Miller and Chevalier after that, where I wanted a different type of practice. So I wanted to do more controversy work, meaning basically battling with the IRS and trying to resolve things. And Miller and Chevalier did more of that. So that's why I switched firms. And then I stopped practicing because if you can't tell, I'm an extrovert. And it's hard probably to imagine, but most tax lawyers are not extroverts. They're pretty introverted. And it was just not the sort of the work environment that I wanted to be in. So I work with a lot of people who, and really help them figure out what's a good fit for them in terms of their personality, the type of work, all of that kind of thing. And that comes very naturally because I know what it's like to be in a situation where it doesn't feel like a total fit. And back when I was, kind of figuring all this out, I just either didn't avail myself of it, or there just wasn't as much of a focus on really helping people in college and even in law school figure out what the best fit, what they should be looking for, that kind of thing. In fact, most law schools, I've heard people say, and I don't know if this is still true, and I certainly wouldn't say that it's universal, but, they'll help you get a job at a law firm. I think there's more openness to government roles. I definitely loved working for the government was actually pretty fun. You got to see how the sausage was made, that kind of thing, and a lot of responsibility. So it was good.
Good. So you said you left law, and when you left, did you already know what you were going to go into, or?
Not really. I actually worked for a friend of mine who ran a nonprofit part-time just to help her with some outreach.
Sure.
And I was actually a little bit burned out. So that actually really worked for me. But I started to work with a coach, and the coach actually suggested that I might enjoy coaching. So I got Myers-Briggs certified, which was really my first step. And I realized that I was really good at helping people to figure out what they wanted to do based on their type. So, if you just look at it objectively, I'm an extrovert, and there's nothing about my full Myers-Briggs type that would say would love to be a tax lawyer. In fact, probably just about the opposite. So I would never say you can't do it, but knowing your type can help you make better choices choices that will work better for you in terms of, maybe working at a smaller firm, maybe working at a firm where it was more business oriented. I think about a really good friend of mine has a 30-person law firm, and I think she'd be a blast to work with. And, we kind of talk about the fact that, perhaps if I had been working there, maybe I'd still be practicing law, because different kind of client, different kind of process, different people. But all of that having been said, I love what I do now. So the last 20 plus years have been really fantastic. So, so I don't have any regrets, actually.
And when Arudia was started, it sounds like it started more as an executive coaching type of program.
Yeah, so I actually started career coaching, sort of the whole start with what help
Okay.
people figure out how to, and I was passionate about that, and I still am. You need to figure out what feeds your soul and what you can get up and be excited about doing, basically every day. So I started there, and then, got I'm the only extrovert in a family of introverts. So definitely was very interested in communication, because my communication style was so different than everybody else in my family. So it was a little bit of oh, what's wrong here? Why do I seem like I'm so different? That kind of thing. In fact, the introduction to one of my programs, when we talk about different ways of thinking, different problem solving style, I use some funny family pictures to show how different I am. And the truth is that when I told my sister I was the only extrovert in a family of introverts, she was like, yeah, I always knew you were different. So, so just to, so I started there, but then I got very much interested in communication, which then is really executive coaching. How do I manage my team,
Okay.
or management coaching? And then that again, that really did morph into like, hey, I love what you're doing, and I'd love for my team to get the benefit of these assessment tools or these communication skills. Can we do a workshop, or can you do that? So it all kind of grew based on sort of that marriage between my interest and clients' needs. And then of course now, I mean, just to sort of fast forward to actually right before the pandemic, we created a leadership academy because I have a number of clients that are in community behavioral health, which means that they get most of their revenue through Medicaid, and which means that they don't have a whole lot of revenue. So things like training, management, and leadership skills, they're always looking for, it's just it's a need, and it's a struggle to find the resources, right? So I had been actually working with one client in Georgia, and we were doing these monthly webinars, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I said to him, I said, well, what would you think about if we shared the cost of the webinars with some of the other organizations, and then it would cost less for you? And he was like, that's great. So we went through, I mean, this is just sort of the, this being an entrepreneur, but sort of the trials and the failures and the experiments and what works marginally, that kind of thing. So I tried to create kind of a collaborative where we figured out like, all right, this is what we would charge. And then depending on how many of you join in, this is what your cost is. And we just couldn't get the commitment, but hey, it was a business model that wasn't going to work. And I had always said I was never going to offer a program where I had to do the marketing and get people to sign up. But guess what? I am offering a public program and getting people to sign up. So, so there's that. But so what we did was the pandemic obviously caused a lot of changes, but we were already on the road to offer this like very robust, very well-tested leadership and management training to to our clients. We've got 10.5 hours of core training. The best format is basically from 10:30 to noon, in the morning, Eastern. So then you can get the West Coast people, the East Coast people. It's not too late in the day where people are tired or they get caught up in things, but we have 7 sessions. And then they get access to 2.5-hour webinars every month, plus like a whole portal that houses everything. So, it's grown into this very robust program, where people get leadership, management, communication training. We use assessment tools. We have a workbook. We've already done 10 or 11 public trainings. We have clients that do their own academy and then they join the webinar. So we're very flexible in our approach. But that's been, for someone who thought she was only going to be in kind of in the coaching space, that's been like a whole thing, right? And fun. I kind of surprised myself,
Yeah. With any new business, especially a startup, let's say, getting customers and clients in is probably number one. When
Exactly.
you started Arudia back then, do you remember as far as how did you get those first few clients and customers in, or how did you get everyone out there to know that, hey, I'm hanging my shingle, here I am?
Yeah, such a good question. So it helps. This is where it helps that I'm an extrovert, right? Because I just naturally like, meeting people. And so a couple things. I developed my talking points. I was able to talk about what I did, what I do pretty clearly. And, the first few clients came as referrals for sure. And then those clients turned into more and more and more referral sources. So I have clients now that I can trace back to my first client, over 20 years ago. I also do a lot of public speaking. you know, and I'm also on a couple of boards. So I'm in my 9th year, which is my last year, the board of the Women's Bar Association. And that's given me a lot of opportunity to network. But what I would say is, and say this to anybody, is I don't do anything that I don't enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been told that it is very much appreciated that I don't try to sell from the pulpit. I do good work, and I figure people get to know me and they trust me and they hire and refer as necessary. But my goal is also to sort of have work colleagues, because we're such a small company. And you may find this, that, you know, I want to have work colleagues. So I have to create that. And I do that through my volunteer activities. So, you know, whether it's speaking in organizations, you know, there's one conference in New Jersey I go to every year. The executive director is a good friend, very good friend. You know, and I go on my own dime. Do I get any clients? Like, you know, but it gets my name out there, and I have gotten clients in New Jersey. And but here's, you know, the big thing is to like do it because you love it, like the business development activities, and be a little bit either agnostic or, you know, let the universe just provide you, you know, take its course. So that you're not anxious about clients hiring you at a particular time, because that's almost like the kiss of death when it comes to you know, when it comes to developing businesses, seeming desperate, you know.
Sure.
It's just like dating in some ways. Nobody wants to date anybody that's desperate. Let's just face that.
Of course. So it's continuous to putting yourself out there then.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Besides referrals that you just mentioned, Anne, would you say what is the largest source that most of the clients are coming in besides word of mouth?
Gosh, that is a very good question, and I'm thinking about that right now. So I'm very well known in the behavioral health space for doing leadership and management training, and I've dedicated a lot of time, in particular through Mental Health Corporations of America. So I think I've gotten a lot of referrals through there. It really is referrals. I mean, I don't do any paid advertising. In the last 9 months, have been working with a social media consultant that I think is doing a fantastic job. And so I've been really happy with that. So I don't know if I'm really answering your questions, but people know me and they get to see my work. I mean, I would actually say that importantly, if you can get in front of people and be seen as an expert, you know, in terms of presenting at conferences. I also do a lot of writing. So I have a column with the American Bar Association Law Practice magazine called The Thriving Lawyer. So in fact, I just submitted my latest column called Why Cowboy Leadership Works, and it's for the leadership issue. The column itself is called The Thriving Lawyer. So I talk a lot about very practical tips for being a good manager, being a good leader, being well, creating a good culture. You know, those are sort of the themes that you would see coming from me. Interestingly, in the years that I've been doing that, so probably 2 or 3 years, 3 years at this point, people, the points of pain are recruiting and retention. And so I've had more people reach out to me about how do I retain my, you know, team members than ever before in the, you know, just with a couple of articles than I had in the, you know, probably 3 years prior to that of articles.
I hear that. It's funny you mentioned that. Talking to clients, business owners, that's probably the main 2 sticking points too. It's having the right team and getting the employees in and keeping them. Now that you mentioned this, Anne, any tips or suggestions as far as anyone listening to this and they want to recruit more people or just keep their all-star team?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about culture. So, in fact, I wrote a whole, it should be available as a download on our website, and I have to double check to make sure that the button is there and easy to find. But I wrote a leadership playbook. It's called the Leadership Playbook for Thriving Post-Pandemic, and it's got 21 plays for for basically creating a great culture, which is what's essential to improving retention. So basically, starting with yourself, and I would say take an assessment tool like the Actualized Leader Profile, and there's a free short form version. If you just go to alpfree.com, and then /Arudia, you can take the assessment and you can see how you are at your best, and then when you're stressed out, what it looks like at your worst. And that's just for your primary leadership style. And I would say, managing your stress and being really objective about your own thinking, which is called metacognition. So the idea that, am I addressing, a problem, or am I letting it go? Because like maybe I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. So it's like, oh, I'll just let it go. And then it's like, I have clients who let things go for like, not just like a month or two, but like 6 months or a year or years, because they won't confront a colleague about their work performance or lack of performance. And that really affects everybody. It's really damaging to the whole team. So knowing yourself, dealing with issues up front, talking about it with a very solutions focused mindset. So in other words, like if you and I are working on a project together and I don't know, something happened where I feel like you dropped the ball, which I can't imagine you would do, but let's just for example's sake, if and it was probably a miscommunication, like these things are almost always miscommunications around expectations, then we want to talk about it so it doesn't happen again and doesn't become a source of frustration. But if I'm afraid to raise it with you because I don't want to hurt your feelings or I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation, then what happens is it deteriorates and we both get frustrated. That's what I see happening in organizations a lot. And so, just be brave, use neutral language, don't assign blame, be focused on the process, and a system for working together, rather than kind of saying, well, you did this, you didn't let me know, like, hey, it's more like, remember last week when we were working on such and such, I think we, we just didn't get our signals got crossed. Why don't we talk about like when we're going to have, check in with each other, or, do we need to keep some kind of spreadsheet for the information, that kind of thing. So being very solution focused, because if you spend time on blaming, either being defensive or blaming others, then that detracts from the solution. I can go on and on, but I would also say, especially if you're a leader, if you've made a mistake, just owning it. Yeah, I dropped the ball there. I'm sorry. It just makes things easier. And it sets a good example for your team.
No,
so there's that.
it's all great advice. Thank you. What would you say drives and motivates you today?
I really enjoy the relationships that I have with clients. I will say that in my work, nobody hires you unless they like you, they believe in your work, they think you add value. So that part is, personally satisfying. But knowing that I can make a difference for a client, that's what drives me. Can I help you be a better leader? Can I help you be more satisfied? Can I help you sleep better because you're not stressed out about what's going on at work? Can I help you be more effective? Can I help the team have more fun working together? Because I actually think work is fun, like solving problems, getting a result, driving a result, like that's all really great. The problem is that when you have friction with people, that can detract from that experience. So if we can eliminate that through better understanding of each other, better communication tools, then to me, it's totally worth the investment. And that's fun. That's satisfying to know that I've shared that expertise with people and gotten a great result for them.
If someone's listening to this and maybe they're a corporate attorney and they've always thought in back of their mind to maybe, I want to have my own business. I don't feel like I belong here. I want to do something else, whether they're providing a service or selling a product, whatever it may be. Any advice or suggestions you would tell that individual before they make that leap and start their company?
Oh yeah, there's a fair amount of planning going on. So the first thing is to really think about the financial side. Like, if you're in a dual income household and you can afford to just quit because you've had it and then figure things out, great. I mean, that's kind of jumping off a cliff. That's what I did. It was it's not what I would recommend for everybody. Understand your own tolerance for risk, because that will drive how much planning you need to do before doing certain things, taking certain actions. And so I tend to embrace a certain amount of risk. And I know that about myself. And I also know where I might be a little bit more risk averse. So I think that's important, just to know that. Planning, understanding what resources you need. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so they do, everybody does it their own way. So I'm careful to not, I mean, I've got lots of experience and I've seen a lot, but my role as a coach in that sense is to help, you, the entrepreneur client, figure out what you need to get this going. And I would also say that with my business experience, and then I would say, like, if you have a corporate lawyer, they tend to have a lot of business, like that practical business experience. They've already developed some good judgment about what's necessary, so that, there's a much higher likelihood of being successful.
That's great advice. Thank you, Anne. I know you're an extrovert. So besides that, are there any specific habits or traits you feel that you have that have helped you in business or even just on personal side of things?
Yeah. Some of the work that I've done, and I mentioned the Actualized Leader Profile, which was developed by Dr. William Sparks. Amazing work, and I do a lot of writing on that. It's sort of the developing the objective viewpoint that allows you to not take things personally. So, I write a lot of proposals. They're accepted. They sit in people's inbox for, like a month, sometimes 2 months. You don't know what's going on with them. And I would say we all became more attuned to that during the pandemic, because you didn't know if people were really sick or dealing with somebody who was, a family member that was sick or had some kind of loss. So my best advice, I think, for anybody who's an entrepreneur or just for life generally, is to recognize that other people's either not getting back to you or stress or frustration, is to not take it personally. And if you're in a, whether you're a lawyer, executive coach, or another kind of consultant, is just to sit, and you're hearing, for example, a client be really upset about something, just say, hey, all right, what do you need from me? Or let's solve this, let's solve this right now. And so again, not letting whatever frustration it is hamper your ability to do your work.
Yeah.
Or your well-being.
That's so true. You don't know what the other person is dealing with. I mean, I see this almost on a day-to-day basis, but it's just continue to sort of communicate and follow up. And
right.
Yes, because, and eventually maybe you'll hear from them, maybe you won't, who knows?
Yeah. I just got an insight from I was talking to another consultant who said, oh yeah, you might not be hearing back from that. I just sent them a proposal a couple of weeks ago. You might not hear from them for like 3 months because they're hiring a new CEO. It's like, okay, because the other CEO had to leave because of personal matter. So it's like, all right, well, I wasn't going to take it personally anyway. But again, that's just like another example of when, they should wait a few months to move forward with my proposal. And they're probably so scrambling, they may not even think to send me an email.
Yeah.
That's just the way life is.
In business, and sometimes you hit roadblocks. There may be some ups and downs. Is there any particular fail or setback that you can think of right now that's, let's call it your favorite fail, right? And what you learned from that?
When I talked about, I mean, there are all these little things that are harder. So when I talked about like coming up with this business model for our leadership academy, which is like, oh, let's get everybody committed. And then, we'll do a cost share arrangement, it'll be great. And then having it not work, understand, first of all, it was a setback. And also it took like a year to get that off the ground. So there's a piece about just being patient and recognizing that everything takes more time than you think, requires more patience than you think. And I have a friend who said, once, lack of patience is its own punishment. But because the more frustrated you get, the more you drive yourself a little crazy, the more you suffer. But I would say that, that model didn't work. And that was like, I don't know, it ended up being 1.5 years or 2 years in the making to get it off the ground. And so for someone who's used to being able to drive results pretty quickly, I would say, and again, it's in your characterization. What are you telling yourself? Like, okay, that is and I say this in air quotes, a failure, but it actually led to a model that is working so much better, right? So, Thomas Edison, he knew like 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, and before he came up with how to make a light bulb. So there's that. And you learn, just having a growth mindset. There's a great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, basically taking anytime something doesn't work out, figuring out what you can learn about it, learn from it, either for yourself as a person, about the process, whatever domain you want to put that in. So I think that's a good life lesson.
You mentioned you invested about 1.5 years, 2 years into this project, and then it changed. How did it, I guess, change from what it originally started to what it looks like today?
Wow, good question. So if we had our first group in November of 2020, so we're now coming up on, 3 years later, it actually grew quite a bit. So again, this is our leadership academy. So we went from offering, 3.5 hour sessions to 7.5 hour sessions. So the delivery, we really listened to our clients about what's going to work for you. And we tried it different ways. Now we don't even schedule the 3.5 hour sessions for a public program. We will for a private program, but not for a public program. It's just too hard to get that kind of time from people. We have learned a lot about marketing. So we offer a free enrollment to an organization to try it out. So, we're willing to we recognize if you're going to send, 150 of your managers, that it's a big investment, and both in time and money. So we want you to be comfortable with it. So that actually helps us market, because and we try to market through association. So right now we're looking at white labeling this, meaning working with associations offering an academy that is geared to their members. So again, like different ways of getting the word out, in addition to LinkedIn, which is how we connected. And then also our webinars. So we had already switched to doing half-hour webinars from hour webinars. I think a half hour people can find time for a half-hour webinar every month, but an hour, like, that's a lot. So we actually offer 2 half-hour webinars back to back. Sometimes people come on for both. Sometimes they come on for the first or the second one, but all of that, we have a very robust learning management system where we have a lot of resources. So we've actually also automated a lot of things and tried so that it's not so labor intensive, and we're continuing to work on that. So we're just like with many innovations, we're working on the refinement to make it easier and smoother and that sort of thing.
Okay, that's great. What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role at Arudia today?
Well, that's a very good question. Well, I need a vacation.
We all do, right?
That's in 2 weeks for our first real vacation since before the pandemic. It's actually the lesson that I've learned, that I continue to learn, is about managing priorities, right? So I get good sleep every night. I exercise every day. I have a horse. I ride 3 times a week. So I'm pretty committed to taking care of myself and enjoying life. And my program with my young horse is a pretty rigorous program. And so what that means then is it's being objective about what's possible and prioritizing. So, is this a 2023 project, a 2024 project? what are we going to invest our time in, who's going to do what, how big does the team need to be. So always making sure that the team is functioning well and have what, including me, have what we need to do our work and to enjoy it.
What do you know now, Anne, that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
Um, boy, things take time, I mean, they just take time, and you have to enjoy the journey. If you don't enjoy the journey, there's something, you either change your perspective, or maybe you didn't sort of choose the right path for you.
That's true. Enjoying the journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You just mentioned earlier you're heading in a couple of weeks to your first vacation after COVID. Where are you heading to?
The south of France. I'm very excited about eating a lot of good food. And my husband and I noticed when we did this, basically the same trip in 2019, that as the weeks went on, that we were doing less and less each day. I mean, really just hanging out. I mean, we're going back to an area that we know really well. So it's like, the food is fantastic, going to our favorite restaurants, going to the markets and making food in the apartment that we rent that is right on the Mediterranean. So like just enjoying the beauty of it all and the experience of it. So I guess I would say that how important it is to be fully present and enjoy every experience that you have.
It's so true. I've been to the south of France several times. Where are you staying? Nice or another town?
Nice. Yeah, so Nice, it's the east side of Nice in a neighborhood known as Montboron, that's sort of towards Villefranche. Where do you stay?
Nice. I stayed in Nice. We went there a couple years ago too, and I agree. I loved it. My wife and I, just like you, after a couple days, you do sort of the less traveling, and you just sort of you almost feel like you're just part of the community, even though you're not. But
Exactly.
yeah, you're just going to the local restaurants, and you're catching the train going up the coast and visiting all the different towns. And we hiked the mountain one day. We sort of got lost, but we found our way to the train again. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. We've been there several times.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's the key. And just enjoying that, being able to slow down enough to enjoy that. That's critical.
Yeah, our first time there was our honeymoon, and we saw a lot of places during our honeymoon, and one of the stops was the south of France, which was Nice. And we said we have to come back there again. And we did a couple years ago, and just me and her, and now we want to take our kids. I have three young
Oh,
boys,
wonderful.
and I'm like, okay, next time we're going to go there, and I think they're going to just enjoy the culture. It's a totally different experience.
Yeah, yeah. The French, well, one thing we notice is that the French love their kids. So, like, you see kids in nice restaurants, especially in the south of France. There are all these like little merry-go-rounds. People take their kids everywhere. The kids are very well behaved, and
Yes,
so that makes it fun too.
yeah.
Walking along the Promenade d'Anglaise, just looking at the water, those parachute, rides and things like that. It's all good. Well, I hope you get back there soon.
I hope so too. It's been a couple years, so that's we just came back a couple weeks ago from Israel, the whole family. So that's going to be maybe next year. So we'll see.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
So what does the future hold for you and Arudia? What is the next 5 years in the horizon?
So you sound like my team, and actually, it's not that it's not something I think about all the time. I would like to have our leadership academy more established actually in other fields. We definitely get a lot of lawyers and other executives, but have it be, do things like get it, certified by SHRM, getting HR credit, that kind of thing, so that it's more popular. I really get a lot of personal satisfaction out of doing the work. And even though it's virtual, but I love bringing together people and clients from across the country. I think that's a total value add for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really growing that, and I mean doing more of the same. I mean, I'm really happy. I'm not sure if I need to grow the team, although I can see adding maybe one more person as we, as we grow and just have more volume of tasks to accomplish.
Great. Coming to an end here soon, you know, besides working and being consumed with Arudia, what do you like to do in your free time for fun?
So other than travel and pack for my trip, I ride my horse. I'm committed to my, my yoga practice and that sort of thing. I love to cook. So tonight we're getting sort of preparing for France. I'm making duck confit. In fact, during the pandemic, my friends were surprised that I had cooked like every meal. It wasn't until much later that we started to do carry out, and I still cook probably, like really cook 6 meals a week, 6 dinners a week.
Wow.
But yeah, that kind of thing. Entertain, have friends over, that kind of thing.
So you said you ride 3 times a week, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a commitment. I mean, just you're in the DC area, so you know that traffic on the Beltway is not great.
Yes.
So I've got quite a schedule in the mornings that I go ride. Get on the Beltway, drive out to Virginia, that kind of thing. But it works. It works.
That's good. You need that time, whether you mentioned fitness and yoga. For me, it's fitness every morning. I have to get it in, or writing, just to sort of clear your mind before you tackle a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think one of the reasons I got through the pandemic pretty unscathed is because I was riding and going to the barn. So I would get outside, I do something physically that was also very intellectually stimulating and all encompassing. So I got a real break from the stress of the pandemic, or and also even though I love what I do, there are definitely stresses that come along with pretty much all of our work, different kinds of stresses. So having that kind of break was really important.
Yeah.
And continues to be.
I agree. And if people want to learn more about you and Arudia, where can they go to find more information, please?
Well, they can go to arudia.com, check out our website, and just reach out to me, send a contact, form, and we can schedule a time to chat.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on, Ed. I had a great time.
Me too. Me too. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Take
You
care.
too.
Bye-bye.
Take care.